Interesting times for sure. I'm sure that's part of what compels people like you and me to be creating shows that air once or twice a week with updates on this because it moves so rapidly. It's interesting, even in the 4 years that I've been hosting this podcast, when I started in so my episode started airing in January 2021. And at that time, some weeks it didn't seem like I had at that time we always Tuesday episodes were always with a guest and they were long, and Friday episodes were always quote unquote 5 minute Fridays. They're always pretty much always longer than 5 minutes, but the idea was to keep them really short. It was just me, and my goal with those 5 minute Fridays was to always have some important piece of news covered, some important paper. And in 2021, a lot of weeks I would end up talking about things like habit tracking spreadsheets, other things outside of AI that I found interesting and helpful, and I thought listeners might enjoy these kind of productivity tips. I even started doing this series of habits. It was a numbered series. I can't remember where I got to. I maybe got to like number 8 or number 9 of, these are, I think, like the most important productivity habits that you can have. And it was intended to go on for like dozens of episodes. But then I think ChatGPT came out. And then since then, it's just every week I have an endless list effectively of extremely interesting, directly relevant AI stories that it never occurs to me anymore to be like, we should do a habits episode this week.
Yeah, it's interesting looking back. We've been doing the show for almost 3.5, almost 4.5 years. We started March 2020, and I remember as a PhD student, as someone working on AI, it already felt like things were moving super fast at the time, at least within research.
Mhm.
But and now I kind of miss those days because it felt really rapid then, but now it's moved out of academia and out of kind of this niche circle where we are making a lot of fast advancements on beating benchmarks, on kind of utilizing neural nets to do things you could not do before. And now all those things are coming into the real world. So, yeah, exactly. It was like, it used to be that we didn't have 30, 40 stories per week that are actually meaningful and interesting. And now it is definitely the case.
Yeah, it's wild. And something that I actually talk about in public talks that I give a fair bit is I open with how this is likely only going to get faster and faster. It,
Yeah, I've reflected on this recently, and I don't know why it took me. I used to think that even going back 2 years, 1 year, my thinking was it's hard to say whether we'll have human level AI anytime soon.
yep.
It was seemed possible, but it didn't seem definitely likely, which some people did already believe in. And I had particular technical reasons, of scaling, of limits, of length and memory, these different things. Now, a year later, a lot of those challenges we've made impressive progress on. Like,
Hmm.
remember initially ChatGPT had a context limit of like 4,000 tokens. Now you have context limits of 250,000,
Yeah, in
1 million.
Gemini you have 1 million.
Yeah, and
That's another great use case for people. That's another real-time search in Gemini, or also if you're uploading like a huge media file,
yeah,
you can upload into the context window of Gemini today 10 or 11 hours of audio, an hour of video, the equivalent of like 10 novels, and they are testing a 10 million token context window version, which would 10x all of those numbers I just gave. So it would be 100 hours of audio, 10 hours of video, or like 100 novels worth of context.
yeah, and so yeah, it's just I guess since ChatGPT, there was a lot of money going into AI to some extent already, but now it's impressive to see what humanity is capable of if we take some of the brightest, most ambitious, most hardworking, generally, let's say, I don't want to say the top or the most talented, but you have a lot of people pushing to progress, to make progress, and to solve problems. And we are doing that at a faster and faster pace. We got Claude 3.5, Gemini 1.5 Pro that are already better than the larger and more complex systems. And we are still solving some challenges, like making these passive models where you give it one input and you get one output. A lot of people are working on the agent aspect of it, where you give it one input and it can operate independently for some period of time and then go off and do things, which I think would be required for human level intelligence to really, you can't have it as a just passive model. You also need multimodality with vision and with movement, ideally, and audio. And that's another thing that we've made very rapid progress of. So what I want to sort of say with all this is, after just a year or two, when I used to think, I don't know exactly when AGI happens, it could be soon, it could be decades. Now I feel like with all the money and all the people and all the talent, I could easily see it happening in 2 or 3 years. And that's crazy, human level AI in just a couple of years. But that's the world we live in.
Yeah, I'm in exactly the same boat as you on exactly those timelines. The watershed moment for me was GPT-4, where, GPT 3.5, the ChatGPT experience, I was like, this is very impressive. This is very impressive. No question. I loved it. When GPT-4 came out, I was like, exactly, I flipped from exactly what you just said is something that is exactly the way I felt. And I've said on air a number of times before on different shows, including this one, where I went from exactly as you said, thinking, if it's possible at all to have human level intelligence across all human tasks, it'll probably take decades, if it's possible at all. I don't know if I'll live to see it. And now it is exactly as you say, it could be a few years.
Yeah, and I guess part of why that is, part of why you believe it, is what is happening now is everyone is spending billions of dollars, right? OpenAI is spending billions of dollars on just training. Well, they're not spending billions of dollars yet. They spent millions to train GPT-4, that we know, maybe 10 million. But Meta, it's certainly in the order of tens of millions. And it seems like people expect GPT-5 or something like that to take something like 100 million or 1 billion or whatever. But they're doing it. They're getting the money, they're getting the capital. You have giant companies like Meta and Google that have the money anyway, just throwing money and infrastructure and compute at it. And so that's, another aspect of it, where if a big part of humanity comes together independently to make progress in a direction, it's something that I've realized that there were these technical challenges, but so many people are working on different aspects of a problem, and there's so much capital and other things made to progress fast that this is what humanity does, apparently. We just do amazing, sort of miraculous things, as we've done with computers and smartphones and everything.